Welcome to Modern Farm Business Podcast. This podcast is designed to help the farm leader bring their business to the next level. We'll cover everything from leadership and finance to strategy and planning. I'm your host, Dean Hefta. Joining us today is Ben Newman. He's a best-selling author, speaker, and highly regarded performance coach. His clients include Fortune 500 companies, business executives, and top athletes in the NFL, Major League Baseball, PGA, and the NCAA. His books include Fight the Good Fight, Own Your Success, and his most recent book, Leave Your Legacy, The Power to Unleash Your Greatness. I first learned of Ben as being a fan of the record-setting 6 Division I National Football Championships in 7 years, North Dakota State Bison, where he's a fixture on the sideline in the locker room as performance coach. Ben, I'm excited to have you with us. Welcome to the show.
Well, Dean, thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you and to be with all your listeners. I got to say, though, that introduction is not fair because you highlighted all the stuff you want people to hear. I believe it's the adversity and challenge and times I've been knocked down in my life and the mentors and coaches I've had that have picked me up off that mat of life that really give me the opportunity to spend this time with all of you. So I appreciate it very much.
It's a great perspective. So easy to think of life as a photo album of the good times, but it's the tough times that we don't take the pictures of that really are what make us who we are, isn't it?
Without question, I always like to say that the manner in which we choose to respond to adversity and challenge, that's what determines the story that we all write.
Exactly. In your work with business and sports clients, you often take the role of performance coach. Tell us about the kind of performance you're working on.
Well, before we can talk about performance with somebody in the business world or in the sports world, we have to understand somebody's why, their motivation, their purpose, what their drivers are, and also understand the vision of where they want to go. So our initial conversations always talk about those elements in order to build a foundation which leads to understanding the daily disciplines or the daily drivers, which then they have an opportunity to commit to drive performance. And everything comes down to a one-day-at-a-time mentality. We can't change yesterday. We can't necessarily predict what will happen tomorrow, but we can take control of making the choices on a daily basis that will drive our performance.
So it's attractive for people to throw out a big goal, but it sounds like it's the little things that we do every day that really makes the difference. Is that right?
Well, absolutely. And it has to start with a big goal and a big vision. And I always encourage people, don't protect yourself when thinking of the vision and the big goals. You know, sometimes our naturalness is we don't want fear. We don't want a big goal that allows doubt to creep into our mind. And sometimes people naturally want the easy way, but that big vision or things that stretch you and make you uncomfortable allow you to figure out what you're truly made of. I think of a marathon, right? I think a marathon is a great example. I mean, Dean, have you ever heard of somebody showing up to a marathon doing no training whatsoever and really having an unbelievable marathon experience? Have you ever heard of something like that?
It might have happened, but I've never heard of it.
Right. The occasional person might be able to do it, but very, very few. So if somebody had a goal to run a marathon, you know, your next step is probably going to be, especially if you're not a runner, let's say, you're probably going to Google marathon training. And then we're going to have names like Hal Higdon pop up. And Hal Higdon is one of the experts on marathon training. And Hal could actually tell us, here's what you need to do every single day based upon this training calendar leading up to a race. And if you want to finish the race, you're probably going to choose to perform the tasks or the daily disciplines of that calendar so that you can finish the race. And it's the same approach when it comes to goals in life and in business.
Well, where do people get off the rails? Because it seems like a marathon is pretty straightforward in what we need to do every day. But in life, goals can seem a bit messier.
Well, I think what tends to happen is we as adults, you know, we face so much challenge, so much adversity. We hear no so often that sometimes, and I'll speak for myself here, others can decide if this happens to them, but, you know, you build this skyscraper in your imagination of all the terrible things that are happening, which lead us to having the fears, doubts, and uncertainties, things that hold us back, and sometimes we choose to not take action. And I learned what it means to overcome your fears and your doubts from from watching my mother battle a rare muscle disease called amyloidosis. My mother was diagnosed in 1983. I was a young boy, around 5 years old, and my mother battled this disease, yet she kept a positive attitude. She would write in a journal, beat the statistics, beat the odds, live with the disease that is chronic and fatal, believe in yourself, combat anything, purpose in life. And my mother helped me understand what it means to have great perspective and positive perspective when she was told she had 2 to 4 years to live, and she was the second woman under 40 years old they'd ever heard or seen of having the disease. So for all of us, I'm not the only one that has a story. Everybody listening, you've been through challenge, you've been through adversity, you've been through far worse than sometimes what we term to be very difficult in our lives. And my mother passed away 11 days before my 8th birthday. Yet 11 days before my 8th birthday, she passed the pen of her life in that journal on to my brother and I to keep writing her story. And her fight and her perseverance and her resilience have taught me how to live and how to fight. And that's the perspective I like to share with others, is to connect to the perspective of something you've been through that's tougher and reframe and stay focused on positive solutions.
Wow, that's a powerful story, Ben. Thank you for sharing that with us. We'll talk more about legacy in a bit, but what a legacy that she was able to leave. Ben, when you look at 10 people or businesses on your left and 10 on your right, they've had equal opportunity, equal talent. The 10 on the left end up failing and the 10 on the right are thriving. What is it that you see over and over that separates those two groups?
I'll share what I've found to be the secret of the highest performers. The highest performers are not seduced by success, and they don't allow their feelings to dictate how they show up. There's a standard or a process that they live to every day. Many individuals battle what they do when success happens. And many people, let's take a salesperson or a company, they come off of their best quarter. And sometimes it's subconscious, but because everything went so well in that last quarter, we want to just celebrate that last quarter for an extended period of time, which leads to inactivity, which then leads to the results not being the same for the next quarter. And that's what I call being seduced by success. Whereas the highest performers, it doesn't matter what they sold yesterday or what they think they're going to sell tomorrow. They recognize all we have to do is go to work every day. All we have to do is live to that standard every day, and the future is going to take care of itself because those past behaviors have dictated that we get results.
So it sounds like we need to separate our activities from our results. Is that right?
Correct, and not allow the feelings to get in the way of saying, gosh, Dean, everything was so great yesterday. Did you see what I did yesterday? And because yesterday was so great, I don't even think I have to pick up the phone today.
Are you suggesting we shouldn't celebrate our success?
I'm not saying not to celebrate success. I'm saying if you want future celebrations, you have to continue the work. You can celebrate success while continuing to work. Far too often people celebrate success and they stop doing the work, which caused the celebration. Let's look at a super example. Dean, you and I are in business together, and we literally come off of our best quarter in the history of the company. We can choose to go and have a great dinner and to take our entire team, and we're going to have this big celebration on Friday night. Is there any reason why we couldn't work on Friday too?
Of course not.
So that's where people, I think, sometimes get mixed up as they say, gosh, things are going so well, I'm going to take time off, and then I'm just going to celebrate a lot. Now, I am a big believer. People would see I take a lot of time off, but it's scheduled time off. So I want people to have balance. I would want people to take vacation, spend more time with your family than you think you have the ability to spend, because you'll then become more intentional in your daily work. My point is that if Friday wasn't scheduled as a day off, why would you take a day off when you already have the celebration for that big dinner that night?
You meet all kinds of people and organizations. You've seen people struggle for 20 years, and then one day a change happens. What has typically occurred?
Typically, it's a deeper-rooted connection to a purpose or a reason, some defining moment that makes them change. Somebody could get sick and tired of being sick and tired. Somebody could go through a very challenging personal experience like I've gone through with my mom, which shifts their perspective to say, my gosh, how could I not take advantage more of every day that I have because it's a gift, right? So it's a shift in perspective. It's a deeper connection to the purpose. And typically when that happens, people start working differently. And when the work changes, the results change. You know, Jerry Rice and I shared the stage together a couple years ago in Las Vegas. And before Jerry and I take the stage, Jerry looks at me and he said, Ben, he goes, you know what I've never understood? How could somebody not give 100% when it's 100% their choice? And it was one of the most simple statements I've ever heard, but one of the most profound from one of the greatest football players of all time. And it literally comes down to connecting to a purpose and doing the work.
Yeah, that's powerful. So often the simple things are the most important and easy not to do. Having that purpose helps us to do the things that are easy not to do.
Correct.
I want to spend a little time talking about the North Dakota State team. You've been in that organization a long time. When I watched interviews and press conferences from their last championship, a theme kept coming up, leaving a legacy. Hearing that from players and coaches isn't an accident, is it?
It puts tears in my eyes hearing you say that. Even though I'm a pretty big guy myself, and I deal with a locker room with a bunch of big football players. You know, it's the relationships that mean the most in that program. And I think what people have a tendency to see is they see 6 championships in 7 years. They, see the national championship rings that might be on one of our fingers, and they see the trophies. And, what I see when I look at one of my national championship rings is far different than what others see. I see Carson Wentz's eyes. I see a young man who I'm a better human being as a result of my relationship with Carson Wentz. He makes me a more faithful person. I see Ben LeCompte's eyes, a former 4-time All-American, 5-time national champion who invited my family, my entire family, my children to his wedding last year. I see the relationships. It's a blessing to be part of that Bison family. And the beauty is I've never had to put on a pair of pads. I just get to watch these kids embrace their daily opportunity and go to work, and I'm just blessed to be a part of it.
What has really made that organization different?
Well, when I mentioned earlier that consistency, right, that commitment to the work every day, or Jerry Rice's quote, right, let's talk about one of the greatest of all time and one of the greatest football programs of all time, it's the consistency in the behavior. I don't know if I've ever been around a program where the individuals choose to do the work every single day. I'm up there in the off season. I'm up there during the season, and these kids do what they say they're going to do.
It's very cool to see. As we wrap up here, Ben, what's something that you want people who spend time with you to really take away?
I want them to connect deeper to their purpose. Far too often we may try to articulate a purpose that's a purpose for our boss or a purpose for somebody else. And I think that moment when we decide, here's what's important to me, here's the legacy that I want to live, here's the deep-rooted purpose, here's how I'm wired, and we start living and making decisions based upon that purpose and that why, I think your future changes and your life changes. And it's a different perspective, it's a different type of work, it's a different type of an emotion, but it's a great place for people to live from. And my greatest life lesson I've ever learned from anybody, it came from my mom, and it's not how long you live, it's how you choose to live your life. So I'd say to everybody, leave your legacy, do it one day at a time, and make the choices that are going to impact others.
Ben, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experiences on performance and leaving a legacy. If people want to get more of what you're working on, where should they go?
So our website is bennewman.net, and you can find out more information about our coaching programs. If people are interested in learning more information about what we do, you can email coaching@bennewman.net. And you certainly have the opportunity to also follow us on social media. We're putting out content to really help people with their mental training and their motivation every single day. And our handles on social media is @ContinuedFight.
Great. Joining us today has been Ben Newman, performance coach, speaker, and author of many books, including Leaving Your Legacy. Thanks again, Ben.
Dean, thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you and all your listeners.
What a powerful message. As you think about your daily disciplines, how are they connected to your greater purpose? How are you making a difference for others? When you face fears, doubts, and uncertainties, remember the challenges that you have overcome in the past to give you energy to face the hurdles in front of you. I encourage you to think about these concepts that Ben brought forward to us today. Also, if you're interested, we have a link to the Amyloidosis Foundation in our show notes if you want to learn more. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Modern Farm Business, and I look forward, as always, to seeing you again next week.